Hi, I'm Johnstone Campbell. I was on the faculty at UMass from 1974 to 2001. Let me tell you a little bit about the educational context that Ingrid came to UMass in. The university had an experimental program called University Without Walls, and I was not on that faculty, but I worked with them. And after several years, the staff of UWW, as we all lovingly call it, realized that adult students who came into the university with no prior higher ed experience had a really difficult time getting through the entire 4 years because UWW made it easy to get through the bachelor's end of it, the upper 2 years, but had no way of helping students get through the general education. I was in the inquiry program, which worked very much in line with UWW, but focused on general education. We were originally set up to work with 18 and 19-year-olds coming right out of high school. But our close working with UWW colleagues, we realized we could do the same thing for incoming adult students who had no general education. So we put the two programs together, and that worked for, I won't pretend to mess with history, I don't remember how many years, but it was a joint program where people like Ingrid could come into UMass as an adult student with virtually no undergraduate experience, move through their general education a lot more easily than the traditional method, and then finish their bachelor's degree in UWW. So that's the world that Ingrid entered. She came in as an older student, and I was her undergraduate general education tutor. We called ourselves tutors. We didn't call ourselves advisors. There was a reason for that. My particular background was in literature and theater. So I was in the inquiry program, I was the humanities and arts person. So I made, at least on paper, a good tutor for Ingrid, who was primarily at that point interested in the theater. But it was not just a good match on paper. We really hit it off, and worked very well together for the time that we had. Ingrid came with a great deal of experience and a young son, and all my memories of Ingrid were with her son Quinn, who I actually now know in his adulthood. But that's neither here nor there. Adult students, in the experience that I had, came with a relatively clear sense of what they wanted to do, but not how to do it. And that was even a little foggier for people like Ingrid, who had to do a general education as well. She brought to her general education studies a level of maturity that stood out from her classmates, both before and after, as well as during. She had a clarity of spirit. She had a clarity of purpose, and an energy that was distinct among her classmates. But she had what I consider one of the most important things to be, first of all, a student, and then to be a successful professional, a sense of humility. And that sense of humility made her an outstanding learner. The language we bandied about quite casually in those days was adult learners. Many of the students were adult students and didn't quite achieve the level of adult learner. Ingrid started there. She was wide-eyed and ready to go intellectually and artistically, and she just gobbled up all the experiences that we had to offer her. The other thing about adult students is, I'm going to say you all because you're one of them and I'm talking to you. I'm not going to say they all. You all came with a level of maturity in a part of your life. Whatever that part of your life was, you were a young parent, you were a worker, you were caretaking elderly relative, whatever. You were mature in the regular world, but our research and our experience, forget the research, our experience was when adult students came, I'll say, back to formal education, because at one point you were all in it. When you came back to formal education, you didn't have the same level of maturity as a student that you had in your adult grown-up life. And if we did our work correctly, that gap closed often within a semester. For younger folks coming right out of high school, they hit the university at the same educational level that they had in high school, because it's just a couple of full moons between the two. But they don't have a level of maturity in their non-student life yet. And so there's a bigger clash and a longer time frame before they begin to mature. We saw with all of you adult students, as I said, maturing within a semester as an adult learner. Ingrid was even faster. But as I say, one of the things that always stood out for me was her humility. In order for us in the inquiry program to work with you all in UWW, we taught our classes at night, so that you all could you could work, parent, whatever you needed to do during sunlight, and then come to classes at night. And what I found in my combined classes, there were really 3 identifiable demographic groups. They overlapped. There were 18 and 19-year-olds fresh out of high school, living in the dormitory, partying on the weekends or whatever, going to football games, whatever they did. Then there was a group like Ingrid and you, young adults, who had a full life outside of being a student. And then you were trying to be a student at the same time. And most of you succeeding very well. And then there was a third group, a second adult group, who were older, young grandparents. There were a lot of nurses who had an RN, been working for 20, 30 years. They were in the late 40s or 50s. Now they had to get a bachelor's degree in order to get promoted. So there were these 3 very distinct groups. And one of the fun experiences as a teacher was getting those 3 different groups together. And Ingrid, in the classes that she was in, was pivotal in that. She was really essential in a number of different ways. that's my primary memory of her as a student, is that she was not just a participant, but somebody in the class that other students looked to. Ingrid, the nurses, and there were a couple of other professions where the degree was as much an educational experience as a certification experience. Ingrid was in the arts. In the arts, many artists don't even go to school. So she wasn't in that same position, which was very hard for people, but not for her. She was, well, I've said it. I mean, my experience with her was pretty much focused on the theater in those days. An example of her, what I call humility, was not only her ability to listen, but her eagerness and even, willingness and even eagerness to listen. She knew how to listen to other people, take what they said and work with it. That could be something, that a faculty member said, or it could be something that a fellow classmate said. And that was also, I would call it a gift that other students recognized. And they would look to her to find out what they were saying.